Seems like you guys got some fans around here. That's great. First of all, thank you all for being here today, and thank all of you for being here today. This is the first year we've ever done this event, but we're really excited, and we're very thankful that you're all here. Well, let's get into it. I know they want to talk to you guys. So who we have on the panel today is we've got AJ Scola. He's the Director of Minor League Operations for the Atlanta Braves. Got some Braves fans, right? Brendan Taubman is the Assistant GM of the Houston Astros and helped the team go from 111 losses to winning the World Series last year. And we don't have to really introduce these guys. Y'all already know who they are. This is Coach Sylvester Croom. And then we have Ozzie Newsome, just from the Ravens. So, like I said, thanks to everybody for being here. Guys, we'll start with y'all. I know you both played together at Alabama for Coach Bryant. And what did he kind of teach you that you took into your careers to go on and do the elite things that you've accomplished?
Of course, I'm the oldest by a couple of days. Well, I'll tell you what, I learned a lot of things. It's hard to narrow it down to one thing, but if I had to make it one thing, it was the ability to keep fighting when things go bad against you. And Coach used to always talk about, he had this story, he said, one of these days in your life, things are gonna get tough. You have sickness in your family, you lose a kid, you lose all your money, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna fight? Not fist fight, but have the mental toughness to get up every morning and keep battling until things get better. And believe me, all those things come back to you as life goes on, and I think about that every day.
For me, when Sly just said that, he reminded me of the story, because he also echoed that to all of us when we were there. But he'd always talked about giving 10%. Each day that you go out, can you give 10%? And what that allowed you to do is not to ever get complacent. Anybody can work to get 10% better every day. And the other important thing that he taught us, that no one was ever bigger than the team. The team was the most important thing, and that you have to find your way to put the team first, and all your other individual awards and so forth would be second or third.
I think that's pretty good advice. Coach, we talk about doing new things. When you were the first African-American head coach in the SEC, can you talk about taking on that role and kind of what it meant to you and what it meant to go into a player's house when you were recruiting them?
Well, at the time, it was a big deal. The first African-American coach in the SEC, and I've just had a chance to reflect on it since I've been out, since my time at Mississippi State ended. At the time, I was just trying to win a ball game, man. When you got Auburn and Alabama and all these people, and they've all got more resources than you, you got to figure out how to try a way to win. But going into the home to recruit players, we talked about a lot of the same things that Coach Bryant talked to us about being your best, about trying to get better every day. And I told parents that if they let their kid come to Mississippi State and the kid stayed there for 4 years, when he came back home, he'd be a man. That's all I ever promised, that he'd be a full-grown man and he'd be able to go out in life and take care of himself. That was the only promise we ever made to him. And that was my objective when I was head coach.
That was great, thanks. Brandon, with the Astros, y'all have had quite a turnaround. I think a lot of people know that story, but to go from historically one of the worst teams in baseball history to winning a World Series is really impressive. Can you talk a little bit about the selection and training process that y'all have at the Astros to kind of make that plan come to fruition?
Sure. So on the player evaluation and selection side, it's a little bit different than football in the sense that it's market specific. So we have 3 primary markets. We scout kids in the international space as young as 16 years old, mostly out of the Dominican Republic and Venezuela. We have the domestic market, which includes high school kids, junior college kids, 4-year college kids, Canada and Puerto Rico too. And then finally the pro market. And the lower the level of scouting, the younger the player, the more similar or akin the scouting process is to what I've seen the past few days in football. And Scott, by the way, thanks for hosting me here. Pretty incredible experience. And as you move up the talent level, you get to the major league level, you have so much information at your fingertips that, we've adjusted our scouting and selection strategy around it. We have robust video from 10 angles for every game. We've got StatCast data, TrackMan data. I don't know how many baseball fans you have out there, but if you watch a game this day and age, you can see with precision exactly where every pitch is located. And along with that data, you have pitch attributes, spin rates, this and that. And so the scouting process is just very different at the major league level for pro players. You're also able to get a much better feel for makeup, right? Whereas when you're looking at a 15 or 16-year-old, it's really hard to know anything more than what you can see in terms of athleticism. And on the development side, I think we've done a really good job there, and our core strategy has been building development plans around players' specific needs. You'll see a lot in baseball, and I don't know if this is true for football, but an organization that has a philosophy and tells all of its players to conform to that philosophy or strategy. We have a different approach. We don't think that every player is better off throwing a 4-seam than a 2-seam, right? It might depend on his arm slot, his mechanics, and so on. So we try to bring a highly individualized approach to our player development process, and really helps bring alignment between front office, coaching staff, and our players.
Yeah, that makes great sense. Thank you. So AJ, you're known as a great interviewer. So what tips can you give us that we can take back to our offices on selecting new team members, and how could we elicit the right information from them by asking good questions?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing you can do before you even get into the interview room, whether we're looking at a coach or a player or an executive that we're going to bring into our organization, is do a little bit of an internal audit. Think about what are the organizational values that are non-negotiable no matter what the role is. Whether you're a board member hiring a CEO, an entry-level person hiring an intern, there have to be some things in your organization or business that are non-negotiable. So once you kind of parse that out, you've got the 3 or 4 core values that you really believe in order to be successful as a group, then you want to start to look at what the role is going to be. What does an A player look like in that role? What's an A player as a manager of one of our minor league teams? What's an A player for a shortstop that we're going to draft? What's an A player if we're going to look at bringing someone into the front office to work for us? And what does that role look like when it's really executing at a high level? So kind of once you get to that point where you realize, hey, here's who we are, here's what we want out of this specific role, then you kind of get into, okay, what are the desired traits that we want in a person who's going to be in that role? We feel like, hey, these are the things that they need to embody to be successful doing X. And then what are the required capabilities and skills that they're going to need to be capable to execute on that level? Then when you get in the room, that's the easy part, because then you know exactly what you're looking for, and really all you're trying to do at that point is kind of look for cultural fit. You may ask some questions that are position specific. You're going to want to dig into people's past a little bit. But really it's just knowing yourself as a business or an organization before you get in a room with someone, and kind of make a decision before realizing who you are.
Yeah, it's really helpful. Thank you. This is for all of you. You've made your careers by finding leaders. What is it that you look for when you're trying to, find that leader, whether it's in the clubhouse or the locker room, because that is kind of, seems to me, what we see with the fabric of great teams. They have great leadership.
Well, I was eavesdropping on the group before, and the young lady talked about humility. And I think humility is a very good ingredient for anyone to have. I think the other thing is, do the person have a passion for our sport, for being into either personnel, coaching, or training, or whatever? Does he have a passion for it? So if you can match passion with humility, then you have a chance to be able to have someone that I think will be successful.
I think leadership, along with what Ozzie said, and it all comes together, it starts first with a burning desire to win. I mean, I think that's the first thing. I think one of the other panelists said it. You've got to hate losing. There's no other way to be involved. You can't settle for anything less than being the best. And if you get a guy who's a team player and wants to win, he's smart enough to realize that he can't win without other people. playing at their highest level. And the best leaders are those people who are unselfish and who serve the other players on the team, who try to help them be their best in order for him to get what he wants to win. And that's the way I look at a leader. The guy's got to win, and now you got to help everybody else be their best in order for all of us to win.
You know, for me, I think there's a lot of different sorts of leadership qualities that can come together in different sorts of leaders. I've spent some time in baseball, but also management consulting, investment banking, and I've had a wide range of bosses with different strengths and weaknesses. But one thing that I've really come to appreciate in leaders within the Astros organization is like a willingness to disrupt and change, because in sports, we're operating in a zero-sum environment, if you will. Everything we're not doing, someone else is trying to do. If I'm not seizing an opportunity, AJ and his team is pursuing that same one. And so with everything changing around you, it's, you know, you could either be complacent and stick with the way you've done things, or you can step up and try to disrupt and change. And that comes with a whole host of issues that I feel like only a good leader can, you know, stand up and take the blow. So someone willing to stand up for change, and I feel like that's a great way to earn respect and emerge as a leader within an organization.
Yeah, I think Ozzie hit on a great point with the humility piece, because, you know, we look at it, everybody's a rookie at some point. And to be a great leader, you need to be a great follower. And I think kind of the empathy to be a good teammate, that's where it starts. You earn the respect of your teammates, and then you kind of grow from there. You know, we look at any team or business, and really 80% of your population is going to be right kind of in the middle of where you want to be. You've got about 10% on the right who are going to be your lead dogs, who are kind of driving your culture, the guys you'd call your leaders. Then you maybe have 10% on the back end that need to be, you know, brought up a little bit. Where things can get out of whack is those 10% on the left are stronger personalities. They get the ear of the locker room a little bit more than the 10% on the right. So what do you do to coach those guys up to give the leaders that are on the right side the skills to be successful? You know, we talk about it. We don't think leaders are born. We think people are born with human intelligence, but that leadership can be taught. So it's giving our players and our coaches the skills to be effective leaders, or really influencers. We don't even use the word leaders. It's influencers in the clubhouse. It's influencers on the bus rides between minor league cities, on planes, whatever, to be successful, to be able to influence those 80% in the middle, and maybe sometimes those 10% on the left.
I think that's really good practical advice for all of us in our own businesses as well. Ozzie, can you talk about kind of your draft process? You've drafted guys that went on to be Hall of Famers that other people passed on. Is there something that you use where you can see things in people that maybe someone else can't see?
Well, we use a general term, is he a football player? You got great athletes. You got some guys that got skills to play a position, but is he a football player? And when you take that, then you can take away some of the measurables. I mean, Jonathan Ogden, when I took him, he had all the measurables. Ray Lewis didn't, but Ray Lewis was a football player. So the mistakes that we've made over the 23, 24 years is that we maybe took some athleticism, we took some speed, maybe we took some intelligence, but we didn't take the football player. If you get the football player, he'll find a way to play, to be a good, productive member of your team.
That's great. And this is really for everybody also. In sports, unlike a lot of our businesses, we get to see you win and lose on the field every day, right? There's a winner and there's a loser. Knowing that you have to have great athletes or football players or baseball players to win games, how do you counterbalance kind of the character side of it, maybe an off-the-field issue? How does that go into the equation on who you want in the locker room or in the clubhouse?
Well, we talk about football character. Number one, do they have good football character? Now, we're in a society right now where a lot of our young men have made a mistake as they make their way up from high school to college into the NFL. Well, can they recover from that mistake? Or do you have the resources that you can help that person that has made that mistake, and he can use that mistake to become a better person? But you got to have good football character. And what that is, I think football character is the same thing that could be at a Fortune 500 company. you know, those same traits that they're looking for, we're looking for.
Well, I've always, you know, dealing with young people most of my career, and I can see the same thing in business, is you look at the person as a member, as if you would a member of your family. I know I've had family members who made mistakes, and some you work with and try to help them. Can they be helped? First of all, do they want to change? Do they want to get better? That's the key thing. Because something I've learned is no matter how much you want someone to do well, or no matter how much skill they have, no matter how much opportunity, you can't make somebody want to be good. You can't make somebody want to succeed. Those have been my worst mistakes, is wanting it more than they did. When somebody really wants to change and get better, then you can help them. That's going to be the key thing to find out, is do they really want to change? And everybody deserves a second chance. But I think you mentioned earlier, but there are some things in your organization that are non-negotiable. You cross that line, it's over. God bless you.
That's a good point. Guys, in the baseball world, it's a little different because you're scouting people, you know, you may not even know their character makeup yet. I know you're trying to figure that out, but you're also going to give hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to kids who are 15, 16 years old sometimes. How does that go into play when someone comes maybe from poverty and then they get paid? And how do you build that into your equation on whether or not they're going to continue to work as hard as they did once they have money?
So I'll take a stab at this first. It's a really complicated issue for us, and you touched on a particular part of it when it comes to bringing in players from the international space that come from a background with no formal education, and they spend a little bit of time in the Dominican Republic typically, and if they are good enough players, they make their way to the States. But that brings for them a whole new world of challenges. These are guys that have never had a bank account before. They don't know how to, you know, order food in English when they want to go to a restaurant on an off day. And so I feel like in the first few years of rebuilding our organization, we focused a lot on how to better scout and how to better develop baseball skills. But I agree with what AJ said before about being able to actually develop mental skills, develop leadership, and give people an opportunity if they're willing to learn. And so in recent time, we've tried to build character and leadership programs where when players are not focused on advancing their baseball skills, they're involved in a wide range of educational and orientation programs that help them be better people and help them function as normal members of society. I think that's a big part of helping them be good people as well as good baseball players.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, our industry is a little bit different than football in that, you know, we're getting kids at 16, 17. We're taking them from an opportunity to play in college, to get a degree. So we have a social responsibility to develop them as a person. You know, the harsh reality is maybe 10% of the guys that we sign are going to make the big leagues. So what are we doing for these kids to ensure that when they get, you know, released or they retire, they move on to another aspect of their life, are they going to have the tools necessary to be successful? I mean, science will tell you that the human brain in males is not developed at 21 years old. So
some would argue 37.
Maybe not 31 either, I don't know. But, you know, for the character piece, it's on us to understand that these kids, they're not finished products in any way, both on the field or off the field. You know, and we need to devote the resources necessary to keep them growing, whether it's, you know, football talent level, whether it's, you know, baseball on-field acumen, or getting these kids ready for even, you know, if they're going to go back to school after they retire at 25 from the minor leagues, you know, have we set up a support system for them to be successful when they go back out into the real world?
Yeah, that's really helpful. Will you talk briefly about kind of the leadership program you've built with the Braves, where you actually bring the front office into the leadership with the athletes, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so, you know, one thing we found at the Braves was that we needed to build a grassroots initiative to kind of grow culture within our organization. We thought about ways to do that, and it's hard in season because, as you guys know, you're so laser focused on winning games, and it's a day-by-day process. So, you know, really what we've been doing is trying to build a horizontal model where, you know, we're kind of breaking down some barriers between our executives, our coaches, and our players to develop an environment where there's clear and consistent communication, there's mutual respect, there's empathy for everybody's role, there's an understanding of what people do and why. And we found that because of that, both going up and down the chain of communication, we've been able to develop a little bit more of continuity and that family that you're talking about, because our members of our organization realize that, you know, we're all in it together, and it's bigger than really just winning baseball games.
This is for everybody also. We have a lot of students here that are with us today, and we have people maybe who they work at a job but they've never managed someone. So how do y'all define the difference, or how do we train people to be leaders? There's a difference in being a leader and being in charge, right? Like, we can put somebody in a role. That doesn't make them a leader just because they're in charge. Is there a way we can train that in ourselves or with our own employees?
I'm going to let you guys start with that one.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, I think an important distinction is between trying to get buy-in versus commitment. You know, you can get somebody to buy into something and maybe it's short term, but when you have a group of committed people who are really dedicated to a common cause, you know, that's kind of when you get something special rolling. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but you know, you hear people talk a lot about buy-in. It sounds like you're selling something. You know, commitment is more of a cult following, which is kind of what you want in a sports organization anyway. You know, that family atmosphere where people feel like, hey, I'm willing to sacrifice for the guy next to me.
You want me to struggle with that one? I'll try. So I can leverage a little bit from my experiences here with the Astros, because when I started in 2013, we were the worst team in baseball, worst farm system in baseball, no TV deals, so no money coming in, and a completely gutted amateur scouting operation. And so no one with any talent within the baseball industry was really excited to go leave whatever team they were working for and come work for me and Jeff with, you know, little baseball experience and all of that. And so our reality was that we had to build by finding junior people lacking experience but with a ton of talent and growth potential. And so that created the exact sort of issue or challenge that you're asking about. Well, how do you take junior people and help them advance into managerial and leadership roles and all of that? And it was actually Dr. Brennan who said yesterday to me something that really resonated about finding balance and not control. If you are trying to develop someone into being a leader and you're trying to control everything that that person is doing so as to help them avoid making mistakes, they're never going to learn through their own mistakes and experiences. But if you find balance and you allow them to succeed and fail in a way that's going to help them learn from those experiences and do better in the future, I think that that has the best payoff over the long term. So you take the small mistakes along the way with the idea that you do that enough times, you'll be developing someone who can really help carry your organization forward.
I think in any organization, the acquisition and development of personnel is the key ingredients to success, no matter what you're doing. If you got good people, then you're going to succeed. As the leader of an organization, is you have to decide what the culture of the organization is going to be. You have to decide what direction you're going in. Basically, you're the bus driver. You decide where we're going. Now, the next decision, you got to decide who's going to ride on that bus with you. And everybody ain't going to want to go where you're going. So some people are going to get on there and, you know, you go down there a couple of blocks and they decide you make a left, they want to go right, let them go right. Get them off the bus. And all those people that want to stay on the bus with you as time goes on, they've committed and decided to go with you on this journey. Then to me, as a leader, your obligation is to help them be all that they can be. And he's absolutely right about letting them grow and develop and trust them to do their job. If you got the right people on the bus with you, and you've set the culture and decided, well, this is where we're going, and they've bought into it, let them do their jobs. I know football coaches that I've heard tell of these guys, because I hadn't worked with them, because I wouldn't work with them, that walk around and check and see if what time you come and go and leave the office. If you've got people in your organization that you've got to keep the clock on, that's not their fault, that's your fault. You hired the wrong folks. I told the guys at Mississippi State, hey guys, I'll tell you what time we're gonna have a staff meeting, and that's it. You do a job. If I ever have to come to your office or ever have to see if you're doing the job, don't worry about it. Hey, you're gonna be gone the next day. It's the same thing with the players. You know, I made rules that if guys didn't go to class, they weren't gonna play. And it cost me. I'll give you an experience. I had one of my best players. We had a hard and fast rule. If you missed 3 classes, you couldn't play. Well, I had this, I thought I was in great shape, but I found out some professors didn't report grades until after the semester was over. So I found out after the semester over, this guy skipped 10 classes. My first thought is, does anybody else know about this? Because I really don't want to do this, because this guy is too good. But I asked, I said, were any of our other players in the class? They said, yeah, they tried to get him to go. I had no choice. You had to suspend him. It cost us a ball game. But if you set that as your culture, as the way you're going to do things, as soon as you decide this is who we're going to be, somebody is going to challenge you. That's why I always believe, too, don't make rules that you're not going to enforce. If you're not willing to enforce them, don't make them. But if you make them, if this is part of who you want to be, if this is part of your culture, follow through on it. Because that's how you develop leadership. When they see that you're real in everything you do, then they will follow suit as well.
Pretty good. The only thing I can add to the conversation is you can lead in a lot of different ways, and people lead in a lot of different ways. There's some people that can stand up in front of the crowd and lead. There's other people that could be in the background, could be just as good a leader as that person that's standing up in front of the crowd. And you, as the boss or whatever title that you have to determine which way people lead and then put them in the best situation to allow them to lead. Everybody can't be up front and lead. It's just not their nature. But they could be great leaders, you know, doing other things within your organization, on your football team. I mean, the offensive guard can be just as important as the quarterback. You think the quarterback should be the leader, but sometimes your best leader is your offensive guard. So you need to spend time working with determining how people lead and who can lead, and then allow them to lead through their own personality.
I think it's really great and helpful also. So this year's theme has been about teamwork and building teams. How do we build better teams in our offices, on the field, in the classroom, in whatever we're doing? But next year's theme is going to be about grit. So let's do a little preview of what next year is going to look like. How do you see grit in the locker room or on the field, or, you know, does that matter? Does that change a player's, you know, Coach, you talked about Coach Bryant teaching you, like, some bad things are going to happen. How are you going to respond to them? Maybe just give us, like, one example each of, like, someone that you've had inside your organization that just really showed that perseverance and that grittiness.
Well, when you say grit, I'm thinking grind. You know, in order to build success, to have some success, at some point you got to grind. You got to grind your way to that success. I can't give you one particular story about someone that is a grinder, but I know it when I see it. I mean, you know, and it's not how many hours that you spend in the building, because some people, as like Coach was saying, you know, all I want to do is to be the first guy in and the last guy to leave, but he may not be doing the work while he's there. So if you talk about grit, to me, you got to talk about someone that's really able to handle the grind. At some point during your career, that you are going to have to strap it on, give it everything you got, not even look up top, but just keep going and taking that one step in front of the other. You have to grind, and that gets you your grit.
One of the things that, and as I'm sure will attest to this, is going through an NFL season is the grind of it. The guys, one of these teams is going to win the Super Bowl this year. The Rams or New England. And I look at New England a lot. The first 4 weeks of the season, nobody would have thought New England would be in the Super Bowl. And I've been on teams that had success, and I've seen, and those are the stories that impress me, is when you hear the journey. We often look at the guy when they stand up there with the championship trophy, and we see him with the rings, and we think about how great that must have been. Well, most of the time, to get to a championship, to be number one, you go through a lot of adversity. And the ability to get up every day and take it one day at a time, to stay in the moment and stay focused and not lose sight of your goals is a critical part as a season in anything, because there is no easy way. You know, it's not a smooth way. There's never a smooth way to a championship. That's the one thing you have to understand as an organization. There are going to be bumps in the road. There are going to be setbacks. There are going to be times when you're going to get criticized, business is not going to look good, but how do you come back from those situations? You got to have a plan for all of that. And that's where the leadership, the mental toughness, that's what Coach Meyer used to always talk about, being mentally tough to overcome a bad play, to overcome a bad day, to overcome a bad year. You know, that's what you got to be, as I said, the grind of just doing it. And that's the one thing I learned really learned in the NFL, because there's almost about 4 different seasons during the year. So you break it up into about 2 to 3 weeks at a time, because you really can't take the full season into mind at one time, because it's just too tough.
I guess y'all see that in the baseball world also. You know, and if you're successful, 3 times out of 10, you make the All-Star game, right? So you're failing more often than not when you're at the plate. Do y'all see guys in the clubhouse that are more resilient than others, and kind of what stands out about that?
We do definitely see that, or I definitely have seen it in my experiences in baseball. And for me, grit means some combination of work ethic, but also working on the right things and trying to constantly get better at what you need to get better at. And I've seen grit mostly in the sorts of guys that are just hanging on to stay with the team, right? They feel like they need to make change. They need to work harder than everybody else. And you sometimes get this other class of players. They're more productive, right, on the stat sheet and all of that, but they're kind of in cruise mode because they've achieved a level of success that's going to keep them making money and productive on the field, and they don't really need to change. Alex Bregman's actually an exception on our team of someone who has reached excellence in performance, but he has a grit despite being a great player. And if I had to bet on anyone on our team and who's going to have the Hall of Fame career, we have some really good players. Bregman is the guy that I put all my money on, and that's because on an off day, he's there at 7 a.m. and trying to talk with every coach, every front office analyst, and get really comprehensive sense of what he needs to do to get better, and then he goes and does it. So those are the guys that stay relevant and stay good, and as certain skill sets wane, they get older, this and that, they've learned over the course of time how to stay relevant. They're not the same person they were when they came into the league at age 21, but they want to get better all the time and, find a way to get it done, have a great career like these guys over here.
Yeah, I think it comes in many different shapes and forms. Grit isn't false hustle. It's not necessarily the guy who's barking the loudest or there the longest. It's just a dedication to your craft, whatever you do. It's a willingness to always be humble enough to try and get better. I think in any business, especially ours, when you think you got it all figured out, that's when you get punched in the face. Kind of when can you pick yourself up off the mat? That's grit. Keep moving on, deal with adversity, be able to learn from your mistakes. So, I think from our standpoint in the baseball world, there are a lot of different personality types that we could classify as gritty, but, kind of having that mindset where you're always looking to get better even when you're the best, that's grit for me.
I think it's a great answer, and that's why we're all here, right? We're all trying to get better and learn from you as experts. So we'll wrap up with this, but if each of you could just kind of give us the most practical advice you can give us before we go back to our offices, and I know these folks want to go get some lunch, but what's like the most practical thing that we can take away from this today?
I think put the work in. I just listening to the baseball guys. It's the amount of work that has to be done before you select a person, before you hire a person. The amount of work that we have done since June of last year up until April for us to just to be able to pick 6 players is enormous. So do all your homework, do your work, and then let that be what decides the person that you're going to hire or the person that you want on your team.
I think I would agree with that. Again, it's all about people. No matter what you're doing, find good people, help them to be the best that they can be, develop a culture in your build, reward those people, and always find somebody, the young guy or somebody who's hungry, wants to get good. Help them find a way to reach their goals. And I think that'll help your organization.
Those are the good answers. I don't know what I have to add to that. I mean, you want to find the best people and you want to develop them. I'll add, for those of you that work within medium and large size companies that have several departments and all of that, one of the things that I've found is great for learning and cultivation is getting people from different departments and different functions to talk with each other. And you can be as formal or informal about that as you want, but it often turns out that problems that you're dealing with in your role or your department are things that people in other companies or departments have thought about. And so creating a platform for people to just share their ideas is a big part of moving forward. And I think something we've done pretty well. An example of that would be getting a coach and a front office analyst and a player sitting in a room all talking about what that player needs to do to get better. And the coach is going to have perspective about what the guy needs to tick, to work hard, and the analyst might have something to offer that's grounded in the evidence or the numbers, and it's through a conversation between people that you build understanding. And I feel like that's advice that might apply for you guys in a normal business setting as well.
Yeah, I think it's about being loyal to the people who've been good and loyal to you, and just staying true to that. We talk about we'd rather fly with 5 eagles than 50 buzzards, and you just kind of consider that in your decision-making process, and be good to those people who've been good to you in the past, and more good people will follow.
All right, guys, any final closing thoughts?
I want to know if we're going to be invited back next year to talk about grit. Answers were good enough?
Keep playing your cards right, and we'll see what happens. But thank you all again for being here. Thank you to all of our panelists all day today.